Hi, my name is Andrea Paratto, and I am a certified dementia practitioner, and I'm here with Natalie Hanson, who is also a certified dementia practitioner. And we are going to talk to you today about the 5 stages of acclimation when an individual with Alzheimer's or dementia moves into a new environment or their environment changes. And we feel like this is an important topic because when anyone moves their loved one into a facility, it is very scary and we never know what to expect. And unfortunately, our loved ones are very good with sometimes making us feel a little guilty. So when you move into a new environment of any kind, say you move into a new house, it is normal to hear weird noises at first, and you don't know what exactly they are, and they're a little scary at first, and you have to become acclimated to that new environment, right? When you get up in the morning and you go to the bathroom or you go to the kitchen, you have to divert your route because now you're in a different house, right? Mm-hmm. Well, when an individual with dementia moves into a new environment, it is much more difficult. And they go through these different stages, or what I call these 5 stages of acclimation, which are very similar to the 5 stages of grief. And they are denial, anger, bargaining, and or manipulation, depression, and acceptance. And all of this information is all collected through experience. This is spending 22 years in the healthcare field, 10 years for you, I believe, just collecting data from the individuals that we work with who are living with dementia and trying to understand what they're going through. So I found that the stages of acclimation occur more often in your earlier stages because I feel like they're a little bit more
alert to their surroundings.
Very much so. They're a little bit more aware of their surroundings, whereas your later stages, they are aware to an extent, but it's a little bit different and their behaviors and expressions are a little bit different. The first stage I want to talk about is the denial stage, because a lot of times when we have to move and it's not our choice, we are in a lot of denial. We are in denial that we had to move. We're in denial that I can't care for myself anymore and I should be independent, and I'm not understanding the why behind the move. Because for me, with dementia, I feel like I'm okay. Like I can handle life.
Right.
I got this. And so I don't understand why I had to move and why I had to leave my home and why I can no longer live there. And so with this stage, it's often very difficult, especially for families, because you can't really debate or argue with an individual who has Alzheimer's or dementia. We know what happens, right?
Right.
We get agitated. We get angry. So it's always difficult to kind of know what is going to work with that person within that moment that's going to comfort them.
The best way to figure that out is have that conversation with the family. Get to know the individual through the family. What's going to comfort them? What's going to help ease them through this transition of the denial of living in a facility.
Right. And even maybe find out what actually agitates that person as well, so that we can avoid those circumstances, because that might be helpful. Often when an individual with dementia or Alzheimer's moves into a facility, or, an assisted living, or, even a skilled facility, they're very accepting in the moment. So while their loved one's moving their stuff in and they're getting their room settled, they seem like they're okay with it. They act like they're okay with it, and they kind of just go with it. And then
the loved one leaves and goes home.
And it increases their confusion. And then they're more confused. And then if you try to correct their reality that they're living in that moment, it also increases their agitation. So I feel, and what we like to do is kind of go with the flow for a minute.
Let them lead you.
Let them lead me. Yeah, absolutely. Trying to figure out what their routine is, what they're feeling, talking to them, listening to them, understanding them. And as caregivers, within the facility, we kind of have to be their advocate. We have to be on their side of things. And a lot of times, the individual feels like the family has absolutely no right to make these decisions for them. And even though we know the family is doing what they know is right and true and is keeping them safe and healthy and stuff, we still have to be on the client's side. We have to be on that individual side, letting them know that it is okay to feel the way that they're feeling. And so I think that's really helpful in getting through that denial stage and not really pushing our reality onto them. And then that just kind of, that denial stage will eventually lead into that second stage, which is that anger stage. So now they're realizing they're not going home. This is where we start to really understand that nobody's coming back to pick me up.
And they don't understand.
And they don't understand why nobody's coming to pick them up, right? And so they start to exhibit those signs of anger and agitation. And how many times have you had your clients pack up their whole entire room?
Oh, they pack it all up, ask them what they're doing. No, I'm going home.
Yeah.
Home.
Do you have money for a bus? I'm going to take the bus. I've sat on benches with clients to wait for the bus.
Yeah.
Because we're living in this moment. They will accuse the family members of abandoning them. Again, we still cannot argue with them. If that is how they feel, this is how they feel. And I'm not sure about you, but there's that saying of you can never tell me how to feel.
Right.
You can tell me how to tie my shoes. You can tell me how to dress myself. You can tell me all those things, but you can never tell me how to feel, right? So we can't just assume that this individual is feeling a certain way and they shouldn't, because they should.
I think in that situation, it's important to validate, validate the feelings of anger and stuff. Let them know that, I get it, you're angry.
And it's okay to be that way.
It's okay to be that way, and I understand, and
Yeah, and when you try to tell them, oh, well, your family's doing what's best for you, and you have this great new apartment here, they don't want to hear it. It actually makes them more agitated to try to explain it to them. And it's unfortunate because you really can't rationalize with them, that it's for their safety, or, that the family can't care for them anymore,
right.
And that kind of stuff. So it's really hard for them to understand. And then all of a sudden they refuse to stay another minute, and they're leaving and they're exit seeking. And, I've sat by the door, I've waited with them. We've actually gone and had a meal or two while we waited for the bus or waited for the family members to pick them up as they were waiting for. And like you said, you have to validate their anger. That's super important, to validate their anger, because they have every right to be angry. The third stage I wanted to discuss is the bargaining and or manipulation stage. And we tacked on the manipulation because often that bargaining is a way of manipulating us into, feeling guilty. This stage can be very difficult for families because this is when they start saying those really hurtful things. We've heard them say, no child of mine would ever do this to their mother.
If you loved me, you wouldn't leave me here.
Oh, that one's got to hurt.
Yeah.
Or even just, you don't love me, or what right do you have to sell my house? That was my property. They are going to do whatever it takes to not have to stay in the facility. And so that's why this constant manipulation and bargaining is playing on that guilt. And we talked about guilt, and we know how hard guilt is. So we have to imagine this is probably the hardest stage for the families. They're going to accuse families of taking their home, taking their belongings. They're going to bargain. They're going to threaten to call the police for you holding them hostage. I've had that, happen to me in the past. Offering you money. Will you just give me a ride? Can you just give me a ride somewhere?
Yeah.
Or money for the bus, because they have to leave. I even had a client tell their loved one that we didn't feed them and that the food was so awful that they couldn't eat it. And so that loved one would take their mom out every day to eat. And it's unfortunate because it would interfered with that acclimation process to that environment, because they were taking him out to all these different restaurants and taking him out to all these different environments. And so every time he would bring her back, we would start back at square one at the first stage of denial. And here we are already pushing through that third stage and we're close, but now we keep changing that environment. So then we end up right back at square one. And a lot of times, when they leave that environment, they don't want to come back.
Right.
And so they argue about coming back because this isn't my home, or they pull up to the front doors and they won't get out of the car because you said we were going home. What is this place?
Especially if they've gone someplace familiar.
Especially, they'll take them home. I even had him, he took her to her house and she was upset that he was selling her house, which only increased the constant questions and accusations and the anger and the frustration. I even had that a gentleman take his mother out to other facilities to look at other facilities to see if one of them would make her happier. And it really disrupted that whole acclimation process because she was even more confused about where she lived and all the things she saw. And it was too overwhelming and it was too much at once. Of course, that individual became very fixated on money because they talked about, how much is this going to cost and how much is that going to cost? And then, well, why can't I just live in my house? Why do I have to live somewhere else? Why does it have to cost this much? I mean, there are questions that they have, and trying to argue with them and tell them, well, you have to live in a facility. It's really hard,
right?
Because they don't want to hear that.
Right. They still think that they can do the things that they did before.
They really do.
And don't really recognize that their deficits.
Right. Or that they're limited safety awareness.
Right. Right.
And so it's hard. I've even gone so far as to ask the family members to maybe remove themselves from the situation. Sometimes I even ask, depending on the individual's behaviors and what they've been through and where they've been, ask the family to kind of step back and give us like maybe a week or two to work with that individual and help them get acclimated without that constant environmental change, as well as the family being present for that client to continuously feel guilty and voice those accusations. Because let's face it, again, I'm going to forget that we had this conversation and all that it entailed, but the loved one that walks away, they retain it all.
Yeah.
Right? They feel it all. And it doesn't just stop.